That night still haunts me. I still remember that night like it happened just yesterday. The cold wind, the dim streetlight, and the sound of my own footsteps echoing in the silence. It all comes back to me whenever I close my eyes. They say time heals everything, but some moments, they carve themselves so deep into your heart that no matter how much time passes, they never fade. That night was one of them. It wasn't just about what happened. It was about who I met and how my life was never the same again. It all began on an ordinary evening, or at least that's what I thought. I wasn't looking for love, and I definitely wasn't expecting to meet someone who would change the way I saw the world. She was standing there at the bus stop, her hair slightly messy from the breeze, holding a small diary close to her chest like it was her most precious possession. There was something about her eyes, not just beautiful, but full of unspoken stories. And in that moment, something in me knew this was no random meeting. We talked that night. Just small words at first, like strangers do. But slowly, it felt like I'd known her forever. We laughed. We shared little pieces of our lives, and somewhere between the pauses and the silences, I started to feel something I couldn't explain. There was a warmth in her voice, but also a shadow, like she was hiding a pain she wasn't ready to share. I didn't know then that the night would take a turn I could never have imagined. I didn't know that one decision, one conversation, would change both our lives forever. And even now, when I think about it, I wonder if I had walked away, would things have been different? But I didn't. I stayed. And that's where it all began. She told me her name was Aisha. It rolled off her tongue softly, but there was something in the way she said it, like she didn't want me to ask more. I wanted to know everything about her, but I didn't want to scare her away. So instead, I just listened. She spoke about the little things, like how she loved the smell of rain, or how she collected old letters she found at thrift shops. Every detail felt like a puzzle piece, but the picture was still incomplete. The bus didn't come that night. We stood there longer than strangers normally would, the street growing quieter, the air colder. Once or twice, I caught her glancing over her shoulder, as if expecting someone or avoiding them. When I asked if everything was okay, she brushed it off with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. That smile stayed with me, even after all these years. At some point, she looked at me and said, "You're not from around here, are you?" I told her I had just moved to the city for work. She nodded like she already knew. Then, almost without thinking, she said, "This place, it's not always safe at night." Her voice dropped when she said it, like she was speaking from experience. I wanted to ask what she meant, but something in her expression told me she wouldn't answer. We decided to walk together since my apartment was in the same direction she was heading. The streets were empty, except for the occasional passing car. A dog barked in the distance. The sound made her flinch, and I noticed her grip tighten around that little diary she carried. I didn't know why, but I felt protective of her, as if I had a responsibility I didn't fully understand. Halfway down the road, she stopped abruptly. Her eyes fixed on something across the street, a figure standing under another streetlight, too far to see clearly but close enough to know they were watching us. I turned to ask if she knew him, but she simply shook her head and whispered, "Keep walking." We walked faster. I could hear footsteps behind us, matching our pace. My mind raced with questions, but before I could say anything, she turned to me and said in a voice so low I could barely hear, "If anything happens, you don't know me." Those words froze me in place. I didn't understand them then, but I would soon. I didn't know what to say after she told me that. The words felt heavy, like they carried a story far bigger than what I could see. We kept walking, our pace quick, but not enough to draw attention. I tried to glance back without making it obvious, but the streetlight was empty now. The figure was gone. Still, I could feel that strange weight in the air, as if someone's eyes were still on us. Aisha tried to change the subject, asking about my family, my work, anything to keep the conversation moving. But every time a car passed, she would pause for just a second, her eyes flicking toward the shadows. It was like she was tracking something invisible. I couldn't tell if she was scared of someone, or if she just lived with this constant fear inside her. When we reached a small tea stall that was still open, she stopped and asked if I wanted something warm to drink. I nodded, partly because I was cold, but mostly because I didn't want the night to end yet. The old man at the stall seemed to know her. He gave her a look, not a friendly one, but not exactly hostile either. More like he knew something about her and didn't approve. She avoided his gaze and focused on stirring her tea. As we sat there, I noticed the diary again. It was worn out, the corners frayed, the leather faded. Asked her what she wrote in it. She smiled faintly and said, "Not everything in life should be shared." Her tone was gentle, but it was also a boundary. I respected it, though my curiosity only grew stronger. While we sipped our tea, a man passed by on a motorbike, slowing down just enough to look at us. Aisha froze for a moment, then quickly looked away. The bike didn't stop, but the way she gripped her cup told me it wasn't just a random passerby. I wanted to ask what was going on, but something told me she wouldn't answer here, in the open. Instead, she suddenly stood up and said, "It's late. We should go." Her voice was calm, but her eyes, they were telling a different story. As we walked again, I realized something unsettling. Every step we took deeper into the night, I wasn't just learning about her. I was becoming a part of whatever she was running from. And I had no idea how dangerous that could be. The streets felt different now. Quieter. Heavier. Every shadow seemed longer. Every sound sharper. Aisha walked faster, her steps almost too quick to keep up with. She didn't speak, and I didn't push her to. I could sense that whatever she was carrying inside her had started to spill into the air around us. We turned down a narrow lane I had never seen before. The dim light from a single bulb outside a closed shop barely reached the ground. Halfway down, Aisha suddenly stopped and glanced behind us. I followed her gaze. At first, I saw nothing. Then, a faint movement, a figure slipping into the lane, walking at a steady pace. The same stillness in the air from earlier returned, only this time it felt closer. Her hand brushed mine just for a second. It wasn't romantic, it was instinct, the kind of touch that says, "Don't leave me." She whispered, "We can't go to my place. It's not safe." I didn't understand why, but I nodded anyway. We turned left into another street, winding our way through alleys that seemed to grow narrower the further we went. The sound of footsteps behind us didn't stop. Sometimes they faded, sometimes they grew louder, but they were always there. My heart was pounding now, but she seemed almost prepared, like she had done this before. That thought unsettled me more than the footsteps. We finally reached a small park. It was almost empty except for an old bench under a flickering lamp. Aisha sat down, breathing heavily but not from running. More like from holding something inside for too long. I sat next to her, trying to read her expression. Before I could speak, she pulled out the diary and opened it just enough for me to see a page filled with names, dates, and short notes. My eyes caught one line, "Don't trust them." Before I could ask, she shut the diary and looked straight at me. "If they find me, you have to pretend we never met." Her voice was firm, but her eyes had that same shadow I had noticed when we first met at the bus stop. I wanted to tell her I wouldn't just walk away, but then I saw movement at the park entrance. The figure from before was standing there, motionless, watching us. The flickering lamp above our bench buzzed and dimmed, casting long, broken shadows across the grass. Aisha's breathing quickened. She stood up and whispered, "We need to go. Now." We moved toward the far end of the park, but the figure followed. Each step felt slower, heavier, like the air itself was pulling us back. My mind was racing with questions. Who was he? What did he want? And why was Aisha so certain she couldn't go home? The park's exit was just ahead when another shadow appeared from the side, blocking the path. Two of them now. One behind us, one in front. Aisha's grip tightened on my arm. She looked at me with a mixture of fear and something else, resignation. And in that moment I knew whatever was about to happen would change everything. Forever. The two figures stood still, their faces hidden in the dim light. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Aisha didn't speak, but I could feel the tension in her grip, the way her fingers dug into my arm ever so slightly. Then, to my shock, the man behind us called her name, not loudly, but with a familiarity that sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't a stranger's voice. It was someone she knew. Aisha froze. For a moment, I thought she might turn around, but instead she whispered to me, "Don't let them take the diary." Before I could ask why, the man in front stepped closer, his face now partially visible under the flickering lamp. He wasn't older than 30, but his expression carried a weight far beyond his years. "You can't keep running, Aisha," he said, his tone calm but edged with something dangerous. "You know how this ends." Her voice was firm when she replied, "Not like last time." Those words made no sense to me, but the way they locked eyes told me there was a history between them, a history I had walked into without even knowing. Suddenly, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement near the park's side fence. A third figure was there, watching us. This one didn't move closer, just stood in the shadows like a silent witness. The realization hit me, we weren't surrounded by chance. This was planned. They had been waiting for her. Aisha tightened her scarf around her neck, shifting the diary from her hand to her bag in one smooth motion. Then she looked at me, her eyes almost pleading. "If they get it, everything changes," she whispered. "For me."
For you.
The man behind us took another step. The one in front blocked the path completely now, his gaze fixed on the bag. I could feel the air thickening, as if time itself was holding its breath. Then, in the smallest motion, Aisha slid the diary into my coat pocket without them noticing. "You have 3 seconds to give it back," the man said, his voice colder now. "Or this gets worse." Before I could react, Aisha did something I never expected. She stepped toward him, as if to surrender. My instinct screamed at me to stop her, but then I caught her eye. There was a message in that look, one I didn't fully understand yet, but it was clear. She had a plan. The man reached out to grab her arm. That's when she turned sharply, breaking his grip, and ran, not toward the exit, but deeper into the park's darker paths. The 2 men chased after her, leaving me standing there with the diary pressed against my chest. And in that moment, a single, terrifying thought hit me. Maybe she hadn't been running from them at all. Maybe she was leading them somewhere. And if that was true, I had just become part of a game I didn't know the rules to. I didn't think. I just ran after them, my feet pounding against the dirt path. The park seemed endless, the shadows shifting as if the night itself was trying to hide her. I could hear voices ahead, shouts, footsteps, the rustle of leaves. When I finally caught sight of Aisha, she was standing in a small clearing, the 2 men on either side of her. But she wasn't scared anymore. She looked calm. "You really think you can keep it hidden forever?" the man in front demanded. "It's not about hiding," she said softly. "It's about making sure the right person has it." That's when both men turned to me. My chest tightened as I realized she had led me here on purpose. I reached into my coat, feeling the diary's rough leather under my fingers. I didn't know what was in it, but I knew they couldn't have it. Aisha took a slow step toward me, her eyes steady. "You need to leave," she said.
Now.
But before I could move, the third figure I'd seen earlier stepped out from the trees. His voice was sharp, almost cutting through the air. "It's over. Hand it to me." He wasn't speaking to Aisha, he was speaking to me. I froze. My mind raced with every possibility. Who was telling the truth? Who was the real threat? In that tense silence, Aisha made her move. She grabbed the diary from my pocket and, without hesitation, tossed it into the darkness of the trees. All 3 men turned instantly, running after it. She grabbed my hand and pulled me in the opposite direction. We ran until the sounds behind us were gone. Finally, we stopped near the park's far edge, both of us breathing hard. "They'll never find it," she said between breaths. "It's safe now." I wanted to ask where she'd thrown it, but before I could, she smiled faintly and whispered, "Thank you for trusting me." Then, without another word, she slipped into the shadows, disappearing like she had never been there at all. Days later, I walked past that park again. Something made me check the pocket of my coat, the pocket where the diary had been. My fingers brushed against something small and flat. I pulled it out. It was a single torn page, and written on it in her handwriting were the words, This isn't the end. I stood there in the middle of the sidewalk, holding that single torn page, reading those 4 words again and again. This isn't the end. My first thought was that she had left it by mistake. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized nothing Aisha did was by mistake. That page was meant for me. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. Maybe it was my mind playing tricks, or maybe the people who had chased us that night were still looking. I didn't see them again, but the memory of their eyes, their silence, stayed with me. I kept the page hidden, tucked away in a place only I knew. I never saw Aisha after that night. I tried going back to the bus stop where we first met, even wandered through the park again, hoping I might catch a glimpse of her. But I do know this, sometimes you don't need all the answers to understand the meaning of something. That night taught me that trust isn't about knowing every detail, it's about believing in someone when the world gives you every reason not to. Life went back to its routine eventually, but I was different. More alert, more aware of how quickly a single night can change the course of your life. And every now and then, when the wind is cold and the streets are quiet, I hear the echo of her voice, calm, certain, unforgettable. Maybe she was right. Maybe it wasn't the end. Or maybe some stories are meant to stay unfinished, so they keep living inside us. Either way, that night still haunts me. Not because of the fear or the danger, but because of the way it made me feel alive, and the way it made me believe that even in the strangest of moments, love can find you, change you, and then vanish, leaving only a page behind to remind you it was real.